Hey, my children, it's March, and I'm mad, boys. I've gone mad. It's March Madness, one of my favorite times of year. I cannot wait. The Sports Pad is, of course, right here with you, giving you our March Madness preview. Max, care to start?
Honestly, we're going to start here in the South. So we saw the first seed was Alabama. We're going to tell you our Elite Eights, some highlight games, and some upsets. So first of all, starting off, I see the Elite Eight going pretty simple, some pretty high seeds. I got Bama making to the top half of the South region, and I got Baylor on the bottom. I think Bama has a very easy path getting there. I think it's going to be a solid route. I only see their only challenge maybe being San Diego State if they make it that far. However, foreshadowing, I might see an upset. Sam?
Yep. For me personally, I also have Alabama coming out of the top half of the bracket. I just really don't see any of those other teams challenging them. Then the bottom half of the bracket, I wish that Creighton could come out of it as a Creighton fan. Me and Max, big Creighton fans, but I think that Baylor is going to come out of it, honestly. So that's who I've got.
I hate to agree with Sam every time, but I got to go Baylor as well. They're just, I think their second game might be their hardest game, but I see a pretty breeze path like Alabama. In a highlight game that I would like to watch, an upset alert, Charleston versus San Diego State. Like I said earlier, I love Charleston, 31-3 record, won their conference, looked very solid. I think they only have one conference loss, so that's my highlight game to watch. Sam?
My highlight game to watch is personally Mizzou versus Utah State. I think that's going to be a really close game. I really want to see what Utah State can do against one of these power conference foes. A lot of the advanced metrics really like Utah State, which I think is why a lot of the betting metrics will like Utah State. So I'm really excited to see what they can do in a game. But personally for me, my one upset alert to see in the first round is actually Furman against Virginia. Ooh. This isn't my game to watch for because this game is probably going to be like 55-49. It's just kind of how these two teams play. I think Mizzou, Utah State will be more exciting, but I think that Furman, the Paladins, can pull off an upset over Virginia.
Wow. So now we'll move on to the Midwest. In this division, we have Houston as the 1 seed. So honestly, I could see some trickery here. I'm going to look at some past brackets. I'm looking at the previous one. I honestly think that Miami, an ACC team, will make it out of the top half of this bracket. That's a weird pick. I know they're a 5 seed, but I think they're a little bit of a streaky team. They looked a little worse off at the beginning of, or at the end of the season, I should say. But I think they got a good chance. And on the bottom side of the bracket, I got Texas. I know Sam's probably going to be leaning the same way. I think that they're just so much more dominant on this side of the bracket. And I see Iowa State probably making it out to the Sweet 16, and I know Texas got that covered in a Big 12 matchup. Sam?
Yep. Me personally, I also have Texas coming out of the bottom half of the Midwest Regional right there. But on the top half, I like to pull one huge upset situation, one Cinderella run in my bracket. I'm taking the Golden Flashes of Kent State, straight out of Kent, Ohio. I think that they are making an Elite Eight run. I don't believe in Indiana. I don't believe in Miami. I don't believe in Drake. I don't believe in Houston. So who do I believe in? I believe in Kent State. I've watched one of their games this year, their conference championship versus Toledo. They look excellent. They were putting up the points. I don't remember what they got to, but the final score was somewhere around like 90-75. That game was electric. Beyond the fact they've played some real close games. They only lost by 5 at Houston earlier in the season, and Kent State's been getting better as this season progresses. I think that Kent State could really be one to pull an upset there.
Wow, so we both have Houston not making the Elite Eight. Shocker. Now we're going to move to the bottom right of the bracket. That's the West. We got Kansas as the 1 seed in this one. Honestly, I've seen a lot of people actually not picking Kansas. A lot of people picking UConn. I think that Kansas will make the Elite Eight. I think they'll get past UConn. That'll be a very good streak I think that they'll have. And those will be some tough games to get past, but I think they will do it. And then another shocker, I have TCU, another Big 12 team, making the Elite Eight. I know it's a little weird, but I just love the Big 12 teams this year. And if I have to have a highlight game, honestly, it's got to be the St. Mary's VCU game. Another upset alert, I think. It's just going to be one of those back-and-forth games, both high-powered offense, both made it to their conference championship, VCU winning it, St. Mary's getting destroyed by Gonzaga, who is also in the West. But I just love this matchup. I think it's just going to be a really close and very good game. Sam?
Yeah, me personally, I really also like that VCU St. Mary's upset. I think the West Coast Conference does kind of get a little hurt by the fact that these teams are going to go like 10 to 12 days without playing a game. It gets them a little rusty. I remember St. Mary's didn't do that great in the tournament last year. I think they were also a 5 seed. Maybe they were a 4. They were one of the high seeds, and it just didn't quite work out for them. But while I do like VCU, I'm taking a team that they're going to be losing to in the round of 32 to the Elite Eight. I'm taking UConn. I think they were in really good form earlier in the season, and they're beginning to get back to it. So top half of the West region, I am taking UConn. Bottom half, however, I'm taking the Gonzaga shocker. I know. I can barely think about what I'm going to say to defend Gonzaga. I've been a Gonzaga hater for many years. I think I've been vindicated. They have not gotten over the hump. I don't think they're winning the championship this year. But they've got the number 1 offense in the country right now. Their defense, I believe, is 79th, which is probably not good enough to win a title. But I think it's definitely good enough to dispatch some of the other teams in the bottom half of the bracket, UCLA, TCU. And, to get to the matchup to watch for, and this one, I'm honestly going to go with TCU versus Arizona State. I'm calling my shot now. Arizona State beats Nevada. Arizona State beats TCU. I think that'll be a fun game to watch.
Well, that's crazy, especially since I have TCU and Kansas in the Elite Eight. Very differing views on that one. Now we'll move over to the East. As the 1 seed, we have Purdue. Very controversial one, as many people thought Texas might actually make this. I did not see it. However, I do not see Purdue making the Elite Eight, even though I'm kind of hyping them up right now. I see Duke, very hot team right now, just won the ACC championship, and they look very solid at the end of the season. I think they're on like a 12-game. They had 11, 12-game win streak, maybe 13. That's a crazy amount of wins, especially in a Power 5 conference. At the bottom half, I've got Marquette. As a Creighton fan, I've been a little sad about how the things have turned out in the Big East, but Marquette has really impressed me this season. So I see one of my least favorite coaches, Shaka Smart, making the Elite Eight. Sam?
Yeah, I have the exact same Elite Eight as Max. I'm not going to spend any time arguing with him over that. I'm just going to point out one upset that I really like. I like the Louisiana Lafayette Ragin' Cajuns to knock off the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee has kind of been reeling. I believe they were 1-out in the SEC tournament, not looking very good. And Louisiana Lafayette, they're pretty good. The Sun Belt is an underrated conference. They faced some adversity. They were able to get out of it. And I think that's going to make them all the stronger in the tournament. But my one other game to watch for, I think, will be really interesting. So sad for Oral Roberts, the fact that they had to get matched up with Duke. I might have taken them over any other 5 seed, but Duke's just way too hot. I want to watch that game, though. I think that'll be a very fun to watch.
You know, talking about fun to watch games, I've got 2 very fun to watch games. First of all, we got to go with the Kentucky Providence game. An upset possible, or I think both teams are very good. I think this might be a low-scoring game, though, which some people might not think. But another good game is the FAU-Memphis game. That one's going to be a very close one. FAU is on a hot run out of their conference, won their championship. Memphis just beat Houston in their championship. So now we'll move to the Final Four. Unless you have closing thoughts?
I don't got any closing thoughts. I'm just going to say this March is going to be mad. I might not have acted the correct madness. I'm not a professional actor in the intro, but I can't wait. Just don't worry too much about your bracket being correct. Just embrace the fun. Embrace the upset. It'll make everyone happier. So to launch right into my Final Four here, I believe that Max and I differ a bit, even though we had some similar Elite Eight predictions. Coming out of the South, I've got Alabama, number 1 overall seed. I believe in them. I don't think that they're region, whatever. I don't think it's the strongest. I think they're making it out of that. And then moving down across the bracket to the East, I'm taking Duke to get out of that region. Marquette is real good. Purdue is solid. I just think Duke is very hot. And, they made their Final Four run last year. We'll see if they can get any farther this year. Then, of course, with the Midwest bracket, I'm taking Texas to get out of that. Max and I were both high on Texas. I think that's where Kent State's Cinderella run comes to an end for me, kind of like St. Peter's Cinderella run. I could see maybe a bit of a blowout in that game, but I really like Texas. They've been on a hot streak, facing a lot of adversity with Chris Beard, his whole situation. They've got a lot of talent on that roster. They're beginning to put it all together. They destroyed Kansas in the Big 12 championship. I really like them. And then down in the West, I'm taking Gonzaga. Gonzaga is the West, whatever you Gonzaga is the West Coast school that you think of. I've got them against UConn. I really could see that going either way. I like both of those teams as under the radar Final Four teams, championship teams even. But I'm ultimately just going to give a slight edge to the Zags just because I think they've been there a little bit more before. They're more used to the big stage.
Okay, that's very solid picks there. Honestly, did you pick Alabama coming out?
I did.
I had some early picks earlier. I'm actually going to switch these up a little bit. I think Alabama will actually make it out of this. I just think maybe having the easy run might be challenged by Baylor, but I think Baylor has the capability of just losing one game, and that's just going to happen against Alabama, which have just looked so good on the boards recently. Going down to the East, I've got Duke coming out of there. I think Duke has just, I said it earlier, their hot streak has been amazing. I'm going off of pace right now. Teams that have been winning a lot of games recently. And that leads me into my next one, Texas. Texas just won the Big 12 championship. I agree with Sam on this one.
Sounds a lot like my pick so far here, man.
I love Texas to win out of this one. So yeah, I'm agreeing quite a bit with Sam here, but we have some similar views most of the time because we just agree on a lot of stuff. And then coming out of the bottom right in the West, I do disagree. I have Kansas. Kansas, I don't know if they're going to repeat this year. They very well could. 1 seed, they look very solid. Jalen Wilson there. And just an overall really well-coached team. People forget that a lot of these teams that actually make it to the Final Four are just teams that have great coaches. Jay Wright leading Villanova. Bill Self leading Kansas. These are teams that just have great coaches. So those are my Final Four teams. Sam, you want to tell me your championship?
Championship, I've got Texas over Duke. I like what Max says. I really believe in teams who are playing their best basketball right now. They're peaking at the right time. Texas and Duke, two teams that preseason they had a lot of expectations. They had a lot of talent on their roster, and they both had to deal with new coaches this year, but a lot of similar factors. They're facing adversity. They're fighting through it. They're going to have a bit of a tough run. I both kind of like them to get out of their respective regions, and I think in the Final Four they can have success. But I've got Texas over Duke just because I think they're a little bit more battle-tested in the Big 12 than Duke is in the ACC. It's just a little stronger, and I like Texas to be able to pull out the national championship. Welcome.
I absolutely despise that celebration. And to be fair, if Texas does make this, I think they have a very good chance of winning. Again, home court advantage, Houston, Texas. That's going to be very close to them. However, I do think that Kansas will overcome their struggles against Texas this year. Bill Self was gone for the Big Ten championship. McCullough was out for Kansas. I think this team was just riding too much on Jalen Wilson. They'll be passing around. They'll play a better game. They'll make it to the championship. And they will play against Alabama, who will stop that Duke run. I think Duke, it's just, they're one of those Cinderella stories from where they were mid-season this year. It's going to be like a North Carolina run last year. So they're not going to win in the Final Four instead of the championship like North Carolina lost. But I got Alabama versus Kansas, and Kansas repeating this championship. Rock Chalk Jayhawk, baby. Back to back. I got Rock Chalk Jayhawks winning it all this year. Thanks for watching our March Madness episode.
Yep. Sports Pod, out.